Let's get started in Glendale. The morning began peacefully. The sky was clear and bright blue, and the sidewalk in front of the bustling cafe was filled with patrons enjoying their morning coffee. Among them, sitting at an outdoor table, was Samuel Turner, a blind man. Beside him stood Thor, his loyal German Shepherd, alert and attentive. There was not just a guide dog. His past as a seasoned K9 unit dog, now retired, had been dedicated to protecting Samuel, providing not only guidance but also deep emotional support, which Samuel greatly valued. Samuel was calmly sipping his coffee when the morning silence was shattered by the sudden roar of 3 motorcycles pulling up to the cafe. The rumble of the engines drew everyone's attention. 3 men in leather jackets with flashy patches dismounted. Their relaxed demeanor contrasted with the authoritative air of the group's leader, who gestured energetically as he spoke to his companions, as if staking his claim to the space around them. Thor, always on alert, pricked up his ears, instantly sensing the unusual disruption to the usual order. The trio slowly moved between the cafe tables, eyeing the patrons. The gaze of Derek, the leader, settled on Thor and Samuel. He paused for a moment, studying the dog. Noticed, he muttered, drawing Thor's attention, who tensed and leaned slightly forward, testing the dog's reaction. Thor didn't move, but his posture clearly signaled weariness. As if testing the dog, Derek suddenly waved his hands and sneered. Is he really that smart? His friends responded with forced chuckles. The tension in the air thickened. Thor remained motionless, but kept his eyes fixed on Derek. Samuel, unable to see the stares directed at him, but sensing the change, asked, "Is everything okay?" His voice was steady, but there was a hint of unease. Perhaps he had picked up on Thor's altered behavior. Their quiet table stood in stark contrast to the surrounding commotion. Derek, noticing that his attempts to provoke a reaction had failed, took a step back, but then laughed loudly again. Samuel, unaware of the underlying tension, reached out and gently patted Thor. "You okay, buddy?" he asked in response. Thor moved closer to his owner, but kept his eyes on Derek, who seemed to realize that the dog wasn't afraid of him. The atmosphere in the cafe shifted noticeably as Samuel finished the last sips of his coffee. Derek and his friends' laughter grew louder, taking on a more aggressive tone. Thor sat motionless beside his owner, his body tense, his gaze fixed, ready for any development. He wasn't just a pet, he was a protector, trained to guard at any cost. Derek, reveling in the attention, slowly approached Samuel's table, ignoring the curious glances from onlookers. "Nice dog you've got," he said with a playful tone, though his voice carried a hint of mockery. Samuel smiled slightly, trying to ease the tension. "Thanks, Thor's my best friend." Derek tilted his head, feigning interest. "Named after the Norse god of thunder. Let's see how mighty he is." Without waiting for a response, he abruptly reached out and touched Thor's muzzle. To an outsider, the gesture might have seemed harmless, but to Thor, trained to instantly recognize threats, it was a provocation. The German Shepherd didn't attack, but took a step back, emitting a low warning growl. The atmosphere grew heavy. Silence fell like a thick blanket. "Easy, buddy," Derek said, raising his hands in mock surrender, but his eyes gleamed with challenge. Samuel, still unaware of what was happening, gently placed his hand on Thor's neck, trying to calm him. "Sorry if he scared you," he said sincerely. Derek smirked, but his pride was clearly wounded by the dog's reaction. He took a step back, but then heard his friends mocking taunts. "What, Derek, letting a dog put you in your place?" The smile faded from his face. In the crowd, he noticed several people filming the scene on their phones. This made him hesitate. Relax, guys, it's just a dog, he said. Dismissively, but Thor knew the difference between play and a potential threat. Samuel, though he couldn't see what was happening, felt the shift in the air. What's going on, he muttered. His gaze was fixed on Derek. He was on edge, ready for anything. Derek stepped back, not to retreat, but to reassess his friends. Taunts only fueled his wounded pride. The air was electric with tension. Samuel, still unaware of how tense the situation had become, tried to diffuse it. He doesn't like it when people get too pushy. Derek waved him off, ignoring the attempt at reconciliation. He glanced back at his friends as if seeking approval for his next move. With a smirk, he stepped toward Thor again, reaching out. Thor, still seated, growled again, this time almost inaudibly, but enough to signal a warning. The tension in the crowd grew. Many onlookers looked concerned, but Derek didn't back down, as if deliberately testing the dog's limits. Let's see what you're made of, big guy, he said with a nervous laugh. You really as tough as you look. With that, he nudged Samuel's chair slightly. That was enough. Thor immediately rose to his feet, his body tense, coiled like a spring. Whispers spread through the crowd. Several people pulled out their phones, again recording the scene. Samuel felt Thor's stance change and frowned with concern. He ran his hand along the dog's neck, trying to calm him, but deep down he sensed something bad was brewing. What's happening here? He asked anxiously, his face reflecting his worry. Derek laughed, but his voice was strained. Despite the risk, he clearly didn't want to back down, especially with his friends and the crowd. Relax, it's nothing, he said, trying to downplay the situation and reassure Samuel, just having a little fun. At that moment, a woman who had been watching nearby stood up abruptly. Stop it right now, she demanded loudly, and firmly. Leave the dog alone. Her sharp tone made Derek hesitate for the first time. A flicker of embarrassment crossed his face as he noticed the disapproving looks from the crowd. Thor remained still, his gaze locked on Derek, his body tense and ready for anything. The air was thick, like a taut string about to snap. Derek said nothing, but the crowd grew restless. People's eyes darted between him, Thor, and the confused Samuel. Derek took a step back, not in surrender, but to gauge his next move. Relax, we're just joking, he muttered, trying to brush off the situation and regain his confidence. But despite his feigned nonchalance, his demeanor betrayed him. Thor stayed motionless, never taking his eyes off Derek, watching his every move. Samuel tightened his grip on the leash. Easy, he whispered. He couldn't see Derek's tense posture, but he felt the rising threat. Thor wasn't just a pet, he was a trained protector, and his heightened alertness made it clear to Samuel that danger was near. Trusting his dog completely, Samuel felt a surge of unease. The crowd fell silent. The tension in the air was almost palpable. Derek stepped back, but then impulsively he kicked a nearby chair, sending it skidding toward Thor. The metallic clang as the chair hit the sidewalk echoed down the street, drawing gasps from onlookers. Thor reacted instantly. He dodged, letting the chair slide past him. Now he wasn't just an alert dog, he was a warrior, ready to defend his owner at any cost. Enough. The woman's voice cut through the air again. Others in the crowd joined her, demanding that Derek stop, but he just stood there, fists clenched, his pride wounded. All right, he grumbled, trying to mask his growing irritation, but his clenched fists and sullen posture told a different story. Samuel, now fully aware of the seriousness of the situation, stood up, holding Thor's leash tightly. The escalating confrontation had finally captured his full attention, and he was ready to defend his loyal companion. Can someone tell me what's going on, he asked, loudly, clearly alarmed before anyone could answer. The crowd held its breath, sensing the rising tension. Thor, sensing danger, crouched slightly, ready to protect his owner if needed. Derek moved closer, his presence looming, especially for someone who couldn't see the approaching threat. What's the matter, buddy? Hiding behind your dog, he sneered, though his laughter betrayed his unease. Samuel remained calm, though his voice carried a hint of tension. Thor is not hiding me from anyone. He's here to protect me, and it seems he senses something I can't see. Thor didn't move, but his low, deep growl grew louder with each second, clearly signaling his readiness to act. The crowd began to murmur louder, expressing their concern. Finally, an elderly man at a nearby table stood up. Enough, get out of here before this gets worse. But Derek spurred on by his friends, and his own pride just smirked. Ignoring the warning, he glared at the old man as if he were just another obstacle, but his expression grew increasingly uneasy. Then the tense silence was broken by Thor's loud, deep bark, a short, powerful sound that made Dirk instinctively step back. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some people reached for their phones while others took a step back. The atmosphere shifted palpably. Samuel, alarmed by Thor's behavior, realized the situation was nearing a dangerous tipping point. Thor, it's okay, he tried to soothe the dog, but Thor kept his eyes locked on Derek, remaining in full alert mode. Derek, driven by the need to save face, suddenly lunged forward fast enough to evade Thor's immediate attention. The shepherd instantly darted forward, positioning himself between his owner and the aggressor. His reaction was swift and precise. He didn't attack, but his stance, crouched slightly, teeth bared and eyes blazing, made it clear it was time to back off. Silence enveloped the street. Derek froze, stunned. Thor's piercing gaze seemed to pin him in place. Realizing the gravity of the moment, Samuel raised his head and said firmly, "You'd better leave now." The crowd began to murmur. Derek looked around, realizing he had lost not just the confrontation, but also his composure. Without a word, he turned and walked away, trying to hide his embarrassment. His friends followed silently, and soon they disappeared around the corner. The morning had started with its usual calm, but now the air was filled with whispers and tension. Samuel felt the change around him, even if he couldn't see it. The distant rumble of a motorcycle faded, replaced by the hushed conversations of onlookers. Thor stayed close, his body still tense, his front paws trembling slightly, feeling Thor for unease. Samuel knelt and ran his hand over the German shepherd's fur. "It's okay now, buddy," he whispered, trying to calm him.